Okay, sounds cool.
Thanks, Sam. So, hello everybody. And my name's Angie. I'm the Managing Director of Education Angels. I'm really happy to be here to talk about preparing our children for school. So I'll just share my slides and get the presentation going, which if my timing is right, we should be just 20 minutes on the presentation, and then there'll be around about 20 minutes and then there'll be time for a Q&A afterwards as well. So huge welcome to you all. Okay then, so giving your child the best start in life, the best thing we can do is give them a real, as far as we possibly can, a real positive experience when they start school. Obviously, we're based in New Zealand, so if you're watching from overseas, it might be different for you. But children in New Zealand must start school by the age of 6 and stay in formal education until the age of 18. I know for some countries it's from the age of 4 or 5, but it's around about that time. And the only way to avoid your child going to school, not that many of us do that, but the only way to avoid that is to register with the Ministry of Education to homeschool your child. And that's an option for parents to do that, but you have to show that you're meeting all the curriculum standards. Now, for many of us, school is the best answer, and it's certainly convenient and offers many benefits as well as education. The opportunity for your child to mix with other children, form new friendships, etc., etc. But whilst it can be a huge milestone and a really exciting time for children, sometimes stressful for parents, there are often some concerns for children and parents alike. For us parents, we tend to worry, will my child make friends? Sometimes they don't know anybody when they're going into the classroom. And of course, we all want our children to be happy and make friends and be popular. So that can be a big worry for us. Another one is worrying they'll be bullied or left out, or, in some way feel intimidated, or that they might not be happy in school. That's a huge worry. And of course, will they do well? Will they measure up to the expectations of the teachers? And we might, for some children, worry about their behaviour or their ability to cope with a full day in school, because some children still have maybe an afternoon nap, or they might have a different routine for meal times. So these are all very valid concerns, but there's a lot we can do to alleviate a lot of these concerns for ourselves and the stress for our children. And of course, we can, as parents, stress about our children going to school, but very often as well, we feel the pressure from other people who are often well-meaning, but they can actually add to the stress. And they can do that in a number of ways. One of them is by comparing our children. So, oh, he's not like his brother, or, my child was really well behaved, and left unsaid is that they think your child isn't. So there's all these stresses around that. Some parents can be quite competitive and believe that being able to read early, for example, is a sign of intelligence. That's really common for parents to have that belief. It's not true, by the way, absolutely not true. And of course, some people will boast a lot about their own children's achievements, and we can find ourselves making comparisons ourselves, or worrying that our child might not be doing so well. So what can we do to alleviate these stresses for ourselves and support our child? The three most important things for our child to be ready for school are being able to manage our own belongings and dress ourselves independently. So if your child can toilet themselves independently, they can look after their own belongings, as in, if you're sending spare clothes, they can put the clothes in their own bag and they know to put their bag on the peg. They can tie their shoelaces. That's a big ask for some children who are just starting school. And for some children, they don't master that for quite some time. So if it's a challenge for your child, then buy slip-on shoes or buy Velcro shoes. That can really take a lot of the stress away, because children worry often about the little things that can easily be fixed. It's really important that we can support our children to be able to manage their emotions effectively, particularly when they're going into stressful times in their lives, like starting school or moving house. Any big change in life can cause behavioral challenges. And as we all know, all behavior is communication. So if your child is struggling to cope, then you might find that they struggle to regulate their emotions and have a short fuse, or maybe don't cope in situations where normally they'd be okay or even thrive, but suddenly everything's a big deal. So that can be a challenge. And for most children, you will see a change in behavior because of the huge change in their everyday life. To a larger degree, that's quite normal. But the more we can intentionally teach your child about their emotions and how to manage them effectively before they start school, then the better they'll cope with the demands of school, or even the demands of the school playground and other children. And the third thing is being able to advocate for themselves, being able to communicate their needs and desires. When we go into a school classroom, there could be up to 30 children with one teacher, or two teachers if you're lucky. So it's really important that your child understands that if they need something, they can ask their teacher, and that they have the confidence to speak up and speak for themselves. So just before they're starting school, talking about what that looks like can really help them. We'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. So being able to put on managing myself, getting dressed yourself, looking after your own belongings, toileting yourself independently, and putting on my own shoes, etc. Allow the time on the lead up to school. If your child is, very often life can be busy, right? And we're rushing off to work, or we're trying to get our children to daycare, and it can be very tempting to hurry them along by dressing them ourselves or helping them with their bags, etc., etc. Really take the time to allow your child to be independent, even if they're struggling. Allow them to struggle through and persist through the difficulty to learn to master some of these skills themselves. It's really going to help them a lot when they get to school. And if you're in home-based education, your educator will know this and will support you and your child to be able to manage themselves, to be more independent in school. These are things that children can often stress about. Where do I put my bag? What happens if I can't tie my shoelace? Will the teacher help me with my clothes? This can be a huge stress for children. So we can help a lot by giving them those skills. On self-regulation, we want children to be able to develop relationships and contribute appropriately to group learning. So for many children going to kindy, daycare, home-based providers, you'll notice that they provide math times or story time sessions, or we might have story time in the library. All these small group opportunities that teach children to sit and listen, to actually participate in a math time, and understand that we might need to take turns, or we might need to manage our enthusiasm and allow other people to speak sometimes. So being able to listen and pay attention at math time, or when they're given instructions, is really important. And you can practice this at home by giving small instructions like, I don't know, can you go and fetch your school bag? And then it could be, can you go and put this jacket into your school bag? And then it could be, can you get your shoes, your school bag, and your water bottle? So you're increasing the instructions by up to 3 or 4 instructions in one go. And that teaches your child to retain the information and follow through on the instruction without getting distracted. So lots of time to practice these things. These sound really simple, but they make a big difference when it comes to going to school and like I say, participating in groups. So sometimes we can all be a bit enthusiastic, particularly children, and it can be really challenging to wait your turn and not want to push in and manage the enthusiasm, because mostly it's only enthusiasm. And so that impulsiveness can be a challenge in school. So teaching them to take turns and to wait their turn. If you're a home-based educator doing a math time, then maybe you can ask your child to, it could be that anybody with their name beginning with A can go and wash their hands. So they need to then listen and then follow through on that instruction. And if you're the child whose name doesn't begin with A, then you're learning to wait and take your turn. And this is a great way to teach children to listen to instructions, follow through, but also manage their impulsivity. Managing the lunchbox is a really big thing, because certainly in New Zealand, most children have school lunches, and we parents provide a lunchbox that has to manage. The children need to have morning tea and lunch from the same lunchbox. So knowing how to store the food, how to open the food, and how to ration the food so they have enough for the morning tea and they have enough for lunch is a real skill. So particularly, I'd suggest that when your child is coming up to say 4.5, you have a lunchbox Friday or a lunchbox day, if you don't already have lunchboxes in your education setting, so that children have the opportunity to practice before they go to school. And they feel so big and so happy that they have this lunchbox, and it's like a rite of passage on their way to school. And it can be made real fun and educational as well, particularly if you prepare the food with them. And then when we're talking about advocating for ourselves, there's lots of little simple things you can do. You can talk about what will you do in school if you need help. If your child goes to daycare, a home-based educator or kindy, they might already have these skills and be confident in speaking up for themselves. I would definitely be speaking to your educator and ask how they are in their daycare setting. And if you know your child is confident in these situations, then great. This is a transferable skill, so once they settle into school, they'll be fine doing that. But just remember to talk about what happens if they need help, who they can speak to, and what they need to do. Our children need to know that they can say no if something doesn't feel right to them. So if an adult or a child asks them to do something they're not comfortable with, then it's really important for child protection reasons, but also for their ability to look after themselves. It's important they know it's okay to say no. And if that happens, then obviously, if there's a reason for your child to do that, if it becomes an issue, the teacher will speak to you. But it's okay when you meet with the teacher that you've explained to your child that it's okay to say no. It's not defiance. If a child says no to an instruction, then that teacher might need to find a different way to ask, or offer more explanation as to why they want something to happen. And if there is an issue, you can work through it later, but the key is that your child needs to know it's all right to say no if it doesn't feel right. And also being able to feel comfortable asking questions and sharing ideas, because this is a really important ability, important skill for learning, but also for forming relationships. The last thing you want is your child to be full of enthusiasm and ideas, but not having the confidence to be able to speak up and put themselves forward. So a good way to practice this skill is to ask open-ended questions, so that your child has lots of opportunity to be able to share ideas and thoughts rather than, and when we say open-ended, we're talking about questions that don't have a yes or no answer, just so they can practice the skill of conversation and yeah, sharing their thoughts. If you're, oh dear, sorry. If your child's struggling with self-advocacy and self-regulation, then don't feel you've got to rush, and you don't feel your child has to start straight away. Like in New Zealand, for example, children don't legally have to start school until they're 6. So if you feel your child is not ready emotionally, then they can benefit hugely from staying in their home-based setting or their daycare setting for a bit longer. We all develop at different rates. You know, it's we yes, we have developmental milestones, but for some children they can be advanced in some areas and behind in others. So we all get there in the end, but it's a little bit like this. This is why we should never compare children, because some children can be really strong communicators, and therefore they have strong social skills as well, but they might not be so strong in other aspects of their development. They might, they might not be, I guess, physically as capable, or they might not be as good with mathematical concepts. You might have other children who are absolute mathematicians. They're really great at constructing amazing things out of blocks, for example, or making massive Lego structures, really, really good at that. But their social skills and their communication skills are not quite so strong. And that's okay, because we all develop at different rates. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. It's really important that we give our children the time they need to master these skills. So if your child needs more help socially, it can really set them up for success by not pushing them into school too early. And also, don't talk to your home-based educator, talk to your childcare centre teacher, or talk to the school about whether you feel your child is ready. It's, being able to meet the needs of your child is much more important than having them start school really early. It's not a sign of intelligence, it's not a sign of future success. In fact, giving them the help they need now while they're young can actually ensure that they achieve much greater success, both academically and socially, later in life. And there's a Stanford University study that showed that children who started school at 6 rather than 5 had measurably better scores in tests by the time they were 7, based on self-control, I should say. So, these social skills are really important to develop. And like all other learning on every subject matter, we all learn at different rates. It's not a race at all. So what about reading and writing? This is often a stress for parents. So pre-reading and writing skills are really important. We don't need our children to be able to read before they start school, but if they have these skills, then it really helps them when they get to school to master reading. So being able to enjoy books and know that we turn pages from left to right, that's the first thing that we want our children to understand. So it's a literacy skill for sure, and it helps when they're learning reading later. Understanding that words and symbols have meaning and being able to recognize some numbers, or your child may be able to count up to 10 or know their alphabet. That's all great if they can do all of that, but they don't need to know any more, because like I say, once they start school, they'll learn really, really quickly. But this sets the foundation. If you enjoy books with your child and they understand the words have meaning, then that's absolutely fantastic. Being able to recognize their own name is great if they can do that too. So that helps. And you can teach this by, yes, you can be writing, you can be pointing out letters, but simple things like in your home-based education setting or daycare, having code tags. And, initially for younger children, you might have a picture, but as they get older, you might have a big picture with their name, their first name, and then you might then remove the picture and just have their first name. Then you might have the first and last name. And all this teaches them to recognize their name by sight. It's useful if we can do that, because of course you're labeling their clothes, you're labeling their bag, and you're labeling their belongings. And being able to, oh, sorry, I've got something in front of the slides. Oh, sorry, guys, I'm messing up my slides. Being able to hold a pencil correctly is really helpful too. So there's lots of things, and knowing how to use scissors. There's lots of things you can do to support a child to hold a pencil correctly. You can, as you probably know, this is the correct position. We don't want our children writing like this. It makes writing really challenging. So there's a few things you can do. You can buy the triangular pencil grippers that puts their fingers in the right position to hold a pencil, or putting an elastic band around the bottom of the pen can teach them where to hold the pencil and get the positioning right for their fingers. But if your child is writing, then it's really, do concentrate not necessarily on teaching them to read and write, but teaching them how to hold a pencil and how to use scissors. Those fine motor skills, it's really going to help them when they start school. And most home-based educators will do this with your child anyway, same with daycare. So when your different schools have different rhythms, so to support your child emotionally and in knowing what to expect, it's really useful if you become familiar with the rhythms and routines of your child's school. So simple things like start and finish times, time for break and time for lunch, and also how that school stores your child's bags or coats. The rhythm of the day. So then you know also what to do with drop off and pick up times. They're the most stressful times for your child. So are you allowed to go in with your child in the beginning? Are you allowed to transition them yourself, or do they expect you to hand them over at the school gate? I wouldn't recommend that. Always go in with your child if you can, and you can insist that you do that. But you don't want to be hanging around for too long either, because that can cause a problem for your child. Knowing what time the school starts, the actual lessons start, and how long your child needs to be in before the classes start. Do they ring bells? Do you hand to a particular teacher? All those practical things. If you make that transition smooth and you're calm, then your child is more likely to be calm. And then when you pick up, where do you pick up from? Do you pick up from the classroom, or do you pick up from the school gate? And who makes sure that they hand your child over to the right person, etc., etc. And also, how can you best communicate with the teacher? For some, it could be online by email, or for some, they might say, come and see me after class. Whatever works, but you need to know. Again, because if you feel comfortable, then the chances are your child will. Remember, busy pickup times can really be busy, so don't worry about demanding time with the teacher. They'll always make time for you if you need it. So children need to feel safe and secure in order to learn effectively. So you meeting their teacher is a really important first step, and then meeting their teacher too. So you're talking about the teacher using her name, so they become familiar with the teacher's name. They know where the bags go. They know where to put the lunchbox, where the bathrooms are. Really important. Children can really worry about that. And knowing when they can use the bathroom, and do they need to ask? Do they put the hand up, or are they allowed to just go? And knowing where they have lunch too. So, and who to speak to if they need help. And that's good for both of you. Once you know the rhythms and routines of the school, try and match them while you're at home, so that your child can adjust to those eating times, so their natural biorhythms can be in line with what's happening in school. Also, teach your child to open their own packets and yogurt pots. And if they struggle, like sometimes crisp bags can be really hard to open. If they struggle, decant them into sealable Glad wrap bags so that they can manage it themselves. Often there is a teacher or a classroom support person around to help, but there's lots of children, so the more independent your child can be, the better. And then remember too that if your child attends out of school care or before or after school, then it's important that you have a similar transition into those programs too. So there's most schools will ask that you send a change of clothes or wet weather clothes or a jacket. Most schools will expect you to provide lunch and also a drink bottle that's labelled, as well as sun hat. And if your child has allergies or special sun cream, remember that too. And also book bags. Some schools provide book bags, but most will ask you to send one in yourself. So just remember it's awful if children don't have what they need or don't feel they have what they need. So if your school has not provided this information, then make a point of asking them. So lunchbox tips. So I would check with the school. There's lots around about healthy eating and what you can and can't pack in lunchboxes. So the last thing you want is anybody removing anything from your child's lunchbox because it contains nuts, for example. So do check your school's rules around that and make sure, like I say, that they can open everything independently. And do practice at home the whole managing their, rationing their food to match the whole day, to make morning tea and lunchtime, because we want our children to feel safe, relaxed and happy so that they can learn. And the last thing you want is them to be hungry or them to be stressed about not being able to look after their own food. So also expect your child to be tired when they get home. It's a huge thing emotionally, as well as all the learning. They've got a very busy day, they're learning a lot, they're going to be very, very tired, and they will most likely show behavioral changes. They might be more attention seeking, they might be more clingy, they might be irritable, they could be withdrawn, more prone to outbursts, and they might even be stressed. And a sign of stress for a child is complaining about stomachache because they feel stress in their tummy, like we feel sadness in our heart. So if you find that your child is complaining of minor ailments and their behavior is off, then it could be that they're really struggling. So make a time with their teacher. Speak to your child about school, make a time with their teacher, and give them lots more love and affection and attention, because they just might need reassurance. And for some, they'll be fine and it's like, just another day. It is a very exciting time for your child and for you too. So I do wish you all the best at the beginning of this journey. It's a very positive and exciting time for both of you. But yeah, do expect some behavioural challenges. Don't want to be all doom and gloom, but if you're prepared for it, then you can support your child through that. And the most important thing, I think, in school is actually your child being able to cope socially and emotionally. If your child can cope socially and emotionally with school, then they will learn, they will be happy, and they will get the most out of it. Don't worry, like I said before, about them being able to read and write. That's what they're going to school for. They'll learn that in school. If they feel happy, relaxed, they're socially able, able to manage their own emotions and look after themselves, then they're going to thrive, because children are born learners. We just need to create an environment in which children feel safe and secure and able to engage. And if we do all that we've just talked about, you're really giving them the best start and setting them up for success. So any questions or comments? Does anyone have any particular concerns about their child starting school or their children in their care? Or are we all pretty confident? Anyone worried about their behaviour? My child is shy. Yeah. They take time opening up. What can I do to help them come out of the shell? No issues with communication. Yeah, that's good though. So if your child is just a little bit more reserved, then your child's most likely slow to warm to new people. I'm making assumptions. That's the case for most children who are shy. And that large groups of people can be overwhelming. And that's quite normal. So to help your child, I would suggest that you do as many transition visits as you can. Right on the nose, that's good. As many transition visits as you can. Some schools will have a photograph of the teacher and like a little booklet. Or when you do a transition visit, if the teacher's okay with it, see if you can get a photograph of you with the teacher or your child with the teacher. If your child knows other children beforehand, then it could help talking about who else is going to be there. But I think you can't. A child being reserved and shy, it's their natural temperament, right? We can't teach them not to be, because it's their natural temperament. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's many reserved people in the world. I'm one of them. So if you allow your child to, if you can prepare them way in advance, meet the teacher, talk about what's happening, tell them what they need to do if they don't want to speak up, if they don't want to talk out loud in front of everybody, give them strategies to go and quietly take the teacher aside, or give your child a sign and the teacher a sign that they need a little bit of help. Or say to your child, you don't have to speak then, you can go and talk quietly to the teacher afterwards. If communication is strong, your child's going to be absolutely fine once they form the relationship with the teacher. So it will be hard initially, but they'll be absolutely fine with your support and the support of the teacher. Really important when you do your transition visits, talk to your teacher about your child's personality so they understand their natural temperament. Because if you've got a sensitive, nurturing teacher, they're not going to put your child on the spot where they feel like they just want to hide away. They'll be aware that this child is more shy, so I'm not going to point them out in a crowd. I'm going to give them time to speak up themselves. So please do that. So somebody says their child has speech development delay. Right. My biggest suggestion there is seek support now. How old's your child? I'd definitely be speaking to your educator or to your daycare or wherever your child is and seeking support from Ministry of Education. The sooner you can do that, the better. Speech is only one part of communication. So I'd definitely be using New Zealand Sign Language, and I would most definitely be telling your teacher, the school you're going to, that your child has speech and language delay, and get them to seek support straight away as well. If you're in a daycare setting and you're already getting support from Ministry of Education, then normally that transfers through to school. And that's quite smooth, being able to get the support in school. So I would definitely, I would definitely be seeking support before they start school. And also, don't rush to school. So, if you can, maybe get them to have your child start school a little bit later.
We have another question from Stephanie, a comment from Stephanie. Really interesting to hear stomach ache equals stress. We have seen that a bit of late.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, it does. And sometimes it can be stomach ache, of course. But, when children seem to be complaining of minor ailments and they say they have stomach ache, but there's no other symptoms, it more often than not is stress, because it's like that whole knots in the stomach, and children seem to be a lot more sensitive to that than adults. So it's a good one to be aware of. Okay, you've got support already from Ministry of Education. That's fantastic. So I would speak to the support worker and the school, and get them, have them aware very, very early that that's the case. Sam, your child started school way too early. He's really stressed out and crying. Yeah, any tips on how to make him feel relaxed before I send him to school? Yeah, I think I would go back to basics. So I'd be maybe starting a transition as if he's never been to school before. Does he have to go to school right now? Does he have to go to school every day? Does he have to do the full day? These are all things to think about. So it could be that you go back to, maybe just go for an hour every day for a week or two. Maybe just go for 2 hours every day for a week or two, and build it up gradually. Forming a relationship with a teacher or one of the primary caregivers is really, really important. There's nothing to be gained by sending a child to school when the child's in stress for the whole time, because your child's not going to learn. He can't learn. You can't learn when you're in stress because you're in fight or flight. So if you think about the brain, the amygdala, which is the fight or flight part of the brain, right, is right in the middle of the brain. And then the higher brain wraps over the top of it. And in a healthy, emotionally healthy state, the amygdala's not engaged. The higher brain is the part doing all the work. That's the learning state. As soon as we go to stress, the higher brain switches off. We flip our lid basically, and the amygdala's in charge. So that's the fear response. So it's impossible to learn effectively when we're in stress. And that's why for home-based education, daycare and school, it's really important that we focus on the emotional well-being of our children, because when we're not emotionally okay and we're stressed, we're not learning, or we're not learning as effectively as we could be. So I would actually go back, take him out of school, or have him go to school for shorter periods of time. And when he's coping with an hour or an hour and a half, whatever it might be, for just a few days a week, then you can gradually increase it. So I know that's not great news, but the best thing for your child is that he enjoys school, because most children have to go to school. So we want that to be a positive experience. So there's no rush. It's not a race. Every child learns at a different rate. And if we can nurture them and support them emotionally, then they'll be learning, and we don't need to worry. Because like I said, children are learners. We just need to provide a safe environment for them to do that. So hope that makes sense. And definitely, Faye, I would definitely speak to the school early and make sure that you've got that support in place already, and the school are aware of whatever strategies you already use, so that the teacher can support them straight away. Thanks for your questions, guys. There's some great questions there. And know too, as parents and educators, never fear speaking to the teacher. From my experience, teachers, it supports the teacher. They really want parents to be proactive. They want parents to talk about their child's personality and development and their learning needs, because the teacher, Faye, for your child is, they've got lots of children in the class. So the sooner that teacher can get the support from Ministry of Education for your child, the better for her as well as your child too. But again, also think about, does he or she need to start school at 5? You might want to extend that out a little bit. Or it might be that your child will cope absolutely fine. So that's you know your child best. Cool. All right. Well, if we've got no more questions, unless anyone has before we go, we've probably got a couple of minutes. No, all good? Cool. Thanks everybody for attending, and even better, thank you for participating. It helps all of us. See you next time, guys. Thank you.